This video provides an overview of the activities within the AVP sequencing software. It is initially important to understand that there are two different types of sequences. The regular sequence can be played in any of the 6 activities, whereas a random sequence can only be played in 2 of the activities. So a regular sequence would be something like a sequence of numbers. This is a sequence from 1 to 10. 1 always takes the first place, 2 always takes the second place. Equally, in a sequence of prime ministers in the 20th century, they each have an agreed position based on the history of when they took their term of office. So this is a regular sequence. A random sequence may be something like these fractions, which are a random selection of steps, but they have an order based on their value. But we don't always know what will be first and what will be second. Equally, a sequence of noteworthy prime ministers, we don't necessarily know which prime minister will be chosen to be first, which will be chosen to be second in a list of noteworthy prime ministers, but we do know that they will have a sequence based on the dates of their terms of office. I'll firstly show you the 2 activities that will work with any sequence. The first is the array activity. The activities are easier to understand if you initially look at numbers within the activity. So within this activity, the learner has to sequence the numbers in the order that they think they should be located. They have 3 attempts to do this. They click check, and the green and red borders indicate whether the steps have been positioned correctly. They click next, and the incorrectly positioned steps return to the step bank to be positioned correctly. Once all steps are positioned correctly, all the 3 attempts are up, the activity will be complete. This activity is tracking the learner's progress. Now, if we selected the prime ministers, we would see that we're now using the 2 step banks. We could select one of the random sequences, and we're still able to complete this random sequence because we are able to see all of the steps in the sequence. So the other activity which will allow you to play with all sequences is the deduce activity. So again, if we select numbers first, this time the steps are hidden in the boxes. We drag and drop with a twist the box into the position we think its content should go. This time we get immediate feedback with the green or red border as to whether we've located the step correctly or incorrectly. If it's incorrectly located, click the remove at the bottom of the box, and the box will return to be relocated. The number of attempts it takes to position the steps is being counted at the bottom, whether that's correctly located or incorrectly located. And the activity finishes once all the steps have been located. So let's have a look at the activities where we can work with just those regular sequences. The first of these activities is the precision activity. We'll start with the numbers. Now, in the previous 2 activities, I've been able to see all of the steps in the sequence. These activities are helping me to begin to memorize the steps in the sequence. So I can only ever see 1 step in the sequence, but I can see the number of places in that sequence. I have to drag and drop the step I can see to the position I think it holds in the sequence. If I locate it correctly, the border turns green. If I locate the step incorrectly, the border of where I try to locate it turns red to indicate the step should not have been located there. The border of the box where I should have located the step turns yellow, and the contents of the step appear where it should appear to indicate that this should be where I located the step. We have a reveal sequence button at the bottom, which we can look at to check the sequence. This activity tracks, and it will track how the user locates each step and how many times the reveal sequence button has been clicked. Now, we can select another topic like our Prime Ministers, and we now have 20 step locations because there's 20 steps in this sequence. But essentially, the activity remains the same. You will see it's actually almost impossible to complete with a random sequence like the fractions, because we have no idea what would be in each of these positions unless we can see all of the pieces in that random sequence. The next two activities are collaborative activities, which will allow two people to compete against each other learning the same sequence. If I select the numbers, we'll see how the game works quickly. So the first player has this tower block here. They have to locate the step in the position that they think it should go. If they get it correct, the floor turns green. And the winner is the first player to light all their floors in green on their tower block. If the step is incorrectly located, the same colour system occurs as in the previous game. The floor turns red where the user tried to locate it, and it turns yellow where it should have been located. This clears when play passes to the next person, and only the green floors remain. So this could be, for example, a sequence such as taking blood pressure, making a law, whatever you want the topic to be. The next game is the Ascend game. This is a two-player game, and it's one of the more difficult games, more challenging games within the software. So I select the number topic again because we'll understand the activity more quickly. So the first player, represented by the blue ball, spins the wheel. They have a starting step that appears at the top, and they need to find the step that would appear 3 steps before this step. So they click through the steps at the bottom until they find that step and click on it. If they're correct, their ball moves up the stairs, and it's the first player whose ball reaches the cellar door at the top. Play passes to the next person, who's represented by the red ball. They spin the wheel, and they have, in this instance, the same starting position, but they're now looking for 1 step after. And their ball moves up if they answer correctly. This time we have a different starting step, and that would be the same if we selected a topic such as making a law in the UK, which is a text-based topic. So that's one of the more challenging activities within the software. The final activity is an assessment activity. It's called a scale. The sequence is presented on this wheel with 1 step missing. The learner has to identify the missing step and score how well or how quickly they identify that missing step and any information associated to it. If they're struggling to recall that step, they could click on the reveal button. They need to then provide themselves with a score as to how well or how quickly they identify that missing step. This is an arbitrary scale, and the student can score themselves in the way that they want to score themselves based on the quality of their response. Each step will appear to be missing once within the sequence, and the student is required to provide a score against each of the missing steps for how well or how accurately or how quickly they identify that missing step. Once all the steps have been presented as missing once and the student has provided a score against each of those, the activity is complete. A print button will appear. The student can click print to print off a record of the score that they gave against each of the missing steps, which will help them to identify how well they're remembering each step position within that sequence. So this video looked at the 6 activities that are available within the AVP sequencing software to help learners to learn or revise the sequences that have been entered into the software.